everybody contributed to the accomplishment of the project. So we had technology, which all my team members were developers, and then myself as a designer, and would come up with a way of having a narrative that would tell the story engaging enough for the users to understand the data. And then, of course, the data itself and the editorial content that could be whatever desk it would come from, we could adapt and work with every different scenario, being culture, technology, sports, you name it, politics. Anything that had data and that had a story to be told, we would work in collaboration, and this made all the difference. So this was my team. We had the lead developer, which was, he was a one-man show before I arrived to The Guardian. He was a developer, and he was working with all editorial desks to put together interactive visualizations. And he was always waiting for the design team to come up with graphics that he could use, so he was dependent on their time availability. So that's why then, when I joined as an interactive designer. I was a full-time designer for working with him, and for me this was amazing to have a developer working on my designs, and for him having a full-time designer just for himself. So it really worked very well. And then we started having more demanding on the editorial desk, so we hired more developers, and at the end, ultimately, we needed a geek journalist that would bridge with the different editorial desks. So this was like, I love this team so much, and of course, time passes, and my boss went to the New York Times, and then everybody went their own ways. Our geek journalist went to Google Ideas, the developers are all around the world, and right now I'm here. So this guy was my mentor, and he still is. I love him with all my heart, and he was really devoted on training me, especially when we were the two of us. Like the best I could be, it would be the easiest for him to develop stuff. So he really focused his attention on training me, mentoring me. We had lots of discussions, we had different points of view, and throughout the discussion some light would raise, and I devote to him that I'm here today talking to you. Then, after he left, it was not so magic anymore, I think, at The Guardian, so I was very open to pursue other challenges and experiences. The first plan was to go after him, but then ICFJ invited me to become an international journalist in Latin America, excuse me, developing and training journalists in Latin America to do what I was doing at The Guardian. Basically, to work in a multidisciplinary way and working with code, design, and editorial all together as one, and not having journalists telling a story and then just sending to the IT department and say, build something with this. And this was my team. So I'm from Portugal, but I was actually living in Costa Rica. And then Mariano Blechman from Argentina, he builds Hacks and Hackers Buenos Aires. It's the biggest chapter of Hacks and Hackers. And from Brazil, Gustavo Faleiros, he did Info Amazonia, which is using satellite data to map out stories around Amazonia. And then Miguel Paz from Chile, he's with us in this conference. And again, this was a team thing, and it was amazing that we could collaborate and work together. And as you can see in both pictures, I'm the only girl, and I'm not complaining. I really like to be with the boys, but I think they could enjoy to have more girls in the team. The female brain works a little bit different from boys, and that's very engaging because our audiences are made of males and females and multicolor, multicultural. So we need a multicultural and multigender newsroom, I think. So, and based on this concept that if you educate a woman, you will educate a generation, I feel like I want to be the living fact of this sentence, because my boss mentored me, and I want to replicate that as much as I can with other women like me. You know, before I joined The Guardian, I didn't even dare to dream that I could be there, because that was like, I'm from Portugal. The very south of Portugal is like no man's land. Most people in the US don't know where Portugal is, not even mention Algarve. So I think I want to replicate this as much as I can. I want to do multiple times what my boss did to me. So then, this was a fellow, Miguel, and he built Poderopedia. And he's a crazy guy, and he's an entrepreneur journalist, business focused, and he really pumped me up my first project was going to Chile, and I was trying to make a newsroom La Tercera work collaboratively, and then we just realized, like, Latin America is full of investigative journalist females, and they are kick-ass investigators, but they don't have any connection with the development side. So they publish stuff printed, and they don't know how much more impact their stuff can have if they go online and if they create interactive and data visualizations. So talking about the sharing is caring mood, which is the mentorship thing, I created what is called Chicas Poderosas, which is actually, the name was invented by Miguel Paz, and this is replicating what happened to me. A friend of mine says I'm a dealer, a digital dealer, and my friends are my providers, and this is because Chicas Poderosas is about bringing the mentors of the world, like people that are here at ONA that are really good at what they are doing online. I kind of use them or invite them to become teachers of Chicas Poderosas in exchange of, the generosity of sharing what you know with someone that can really take advantage of your knowledge to improve their life and ultimately, I think, a society. We are talking about Mexico, Chile, Costa Rica, Argentina, Brazil. It's third world countries that needs our help from first world countries to push them up. And I think ultimately, if we really push strongly on this, my dream is that the third world countries will become first world countries, because I think they are not undeveloped. They are not undeveloped. They have other problems than the ones we have in first world countries. So if we help them solve the ones we already solved, then maybe they can come upwards. So these are the events I've done in a year time as a ICFJ fellow. So the first one in Chile, we increased 120% the amount of girls because we teamed up with Hacks and Hackers. And Hacks and Hackers, is, for those who are not familiar with it, is a meetup where it joins journalists and developers to come up with new ways of telling stories online. And this is very, very male-populated because boys feel so comfortable developing, even if they are beginners, they feel comfortable. And girls usually, and I'm generalizing, but there are exceptions, of course, but female, like women, feel less comfortable going into an environment where they don't think that they don't feel their skill level is as high as the boys. So that's why Chicas Poderosas, it's kind of the sister of Hacks and Hackers, and it aims to bring more women in a comfortable zone where they can share their lack of knowledge and development, but they will to learn. So the first one in Chile, the second one in Costa Rica, we had more than 120 people from all the different newspapers of Costa Rica collaborating for the first time in the history of journalism in Costa Rica, like editors-in-chief that wouldn't talk to other editors-in-chief because it's competence. They worked together in the same table discussing themes that they had different opinions on, and this is like amazing. And Pura Vida is like the motto of Costa Rica. Then we did one in Bogota, and let me tell you this crazy story. So I met a guy that did animation events in Bogota, and then one day I wanted to do a Bogota event, and I was like, I need to call this guy because he does these events, so maybe he knows who can I reach to for funding. And because I didn't have money to put an event together. And he put me in contact with a friend of his father that was actually the brother of the president of Colombia. And then we just started organizing the event together via WhatsApp. And because he was so, like, he needed to put a very big event to explain to the government why he would spend this money in developing coding culture for newsrooms. So we did an event for 500 people just because the government needed those numbers, and it was amazing. It was myself and two students of journalism putting the event together, but the conclusion of this was like, everything is possible. You can even reach the president and make something happen if you want. Like my main obstacle is not having enough money to bring people together. All these events are free, and I just have to find money to pay the mentors, like the people that are coming to teach. Like, they don't get any salary, but they get all the expenses paid. And it's basically using generosity of people. Then the second one in Santiago, and this was like even bigger, so there was a request, you have to come back and you have to do a bigger event, and now I have another bigger event with two competitive newsrooms wanting to collaborate, to work together to do this, which I think it's really changing the tradition inside the newsrooms there. I want to show you this video because it's like a nutshell of what Chicas Poderosas is. We have sound here. So this was one big event in Costa Rica.
And countries and communities
These are the teachers.
where they aren't really sure, how to sort of make the first step, how to, get their feet wet. I think
This
it's
is Costa Rica.
a really amazing group of people that are doing amazing things.
All we hear is Radio Gaga, Radio Goo Goo, Radio Gaga. All we hear is Radio Gaga, Radio Gaga. Radio was new. Someone still loves you.
Chicas, era un proyecto que Mariana inició como parte de su beca y ya ahora hace mucho tiempo dejó de ser un proyecto. Ya Chicas tiene vida propia, es un gran imán que está atrayendo cada vez a más gente de todas las áreas para sentarnos a crear juntos de diferentes temas y meter un poco más a la gente en dos vertientes. Una que tiene que ver con la aproximación a temas tecnológicos y la otra que para mí es más importante que esa y es aprender a trabajar en equipo.
Es también una muestra de que el futuro va a ser mejor y que cada vez vamos a avanzar más como periodistas, como personas, como sociedades y que tenemos muchas razones para ser optimistas.
I love the energy and the commitment and the excitement that the whole conference has.
Para nosotros, Chicos Poderosos, es una iniciativa muy valorosa y interesante. Uno, porque trae expertos del mundo, digamos, que nunca vamos a tener acceso a ellos sin este programa. Y con la experiencia de esos expertos, nosotros vamos aprendiendo, ¿verdad? Porque hay formas antiguas de periodismo que ya sabemos y manejamos bien, pero hay otros que no. Entonces, veando los trabajos que hacen otros, es muy valoroso.
We're teaching how to deal with data, the problems people find in data, and working together to translate data, video, and photography into a compelling journalistic web presentation.
Es un evento, un encuentro que tiene mucha energía, como traer lo mejor de las personas para que trabajen juntos en un proyecto concreto. Por eso hay un intercambio muy grande de conocimientos. Es la importancia también de la fuerza de las mujeres para ponernos juntos a trabajar con mucha alegría. Eso es parte del evento, creo. Sí, la energía que hay hace todo mucho mejor.
So basically, we brought together 3 newsrooms of Costa Rica, and Brian Boyer from NPR, Gustavo Faleiros, Chris Cross from The Guardian, and Martin from another newspaper in Guatemala. So lots of people that are experimenting on how to work collaboratively, having developers working side by side with editors and designers. And then we did this one in Mexico, powered by the Embassy of US in Mexico, and we brought girls from all over the states of Mexico, places where sometimes they don't even have so good access to the internet. So we covered the basics on how, when you have internet access, you can scrape information for your investigations. So depending on the focus of the place we were trying to do these projects, we would switch the trainers. So this was very focused on getting access to information. And then the latest one was in Miami. It was powered by Night, and it was 120 girls from Latin America flew to Miami. Some of them, for the first time, they left their country to be immersed in 4 days of intensive training inside Univision headquarters and then University of Miami with Alberto Cairo. So it's like having real access to like what is being done in great newsrooms and how can they catch up. Starting from scratch, and we have different levels because depending on the crowd. And then in 1 year we reached many countries, and we aim to reach even more now. So this was my project as a fellow. Then that's the outcome is that we really want more women into newsrooms because this is a real problem. And right now I'm at Fusion, and the demographics of senior executives, this is the evolution, and it has been becoming better in terms of senior executives. At Fusion, we have like big executive females, but then when it comes to tech people working directly with technology, we have a hard time, and this is the case scenario of 2009, and it's not very much better now. And this is my team of Interactive, which I love them so much, but I would love to have more girls, and it's a hard time to find girl developers that want to work in news. So there's a lot of development and focus on bringing more developer girls into tech companies, but for news it's very hard. So I'm gonna keep pushing on the Chicas Poderosas for newsrooms. And we are very pro collaboration instead of competition, so we work, for instance, with Twitter, and as well using a little bit of the network and friends. Like I used to work with a data editor now at Twitter, Simon Rogers, and we still love to work together, so we do stuff outside our work, and now we are trying to bring Twitter into Fusion, and we work collaboratively as well with people from other companies. So the coding and the team spirit is always there. And then dreams can come true, and I just became a JSK fellow recently, and this year my project is going to be Chicas Poderosas version 2.0, and because I don't want this event to depend on me being there, I want to train the trainers. So what I'm going to try to do is bring all together, like all these countries that are asking to have Chicas Poderosas there, have ambassadors that will come. I'm planning to have an event, and eventually with Code 2040, and train the trainers in what it is to work in collaboration with developers, designers, and editors. How can we make that happen, and how can these ambassador girls can go to their countries and build these events themselves and help out with a network of trainers. I think this is like something we really have to pursue. We need gender balance in newsrooms, and we need to work with different skill sets. So I'm going to pass the word now to Iris. Thank you so much.
Thanks. So, she covered newsroom and technology, and I'm going to dive deep into technology and the diversity issues that we're facing today. So the typical startup starts like this: in a dorm room at some college with a bunch of dudes hanging out. So if we've heard this story over and over again, right? We were sitting in a dorm room, and we started our company because we had this idea, and we were all engineers, so then we just started coding, and then we hired our friends who hired their friends who hired their friends. That's how you get this. So these are the numbers for Facebook and Google when it comes to diversity on both the gender and racial divide. They are not alone in their numbers looking unrepresentative of the US. There are about 1.4 million open jobs by the year 2020 in technical jobs. 70% of those will go unfilled by that same time. At the same time, only 9% of the tech workforce is Black or Latino, and the highest growing populations are Black and Latino. So by 2040, where Code 2040 gets our name, Blacks and Latinos will be 42% of the population. So if at the time where we have all these open jobs and we have this growing community and they're not reflected in those open jobs, how do we fix those issues and help the 42% join the tech industry? So part of the tech industry that I'd like to point out is that it's serving not just this narrow group of people who are creating the technology, but it's also serving communities outside of those people. So this is a stat about the use of Twitter in the Black community. So if you're 18 to 29 and you're a user of the internet and you're African American, 40% of Blacks who use the internet are using Twitter versus 28% of white internet users. So that's a really powerful number that Twitter should be and is paying attention to when it comes to the diversity numbers. If Black people are using their technology, they should also be building it so that they can build it towards those communities that are actually engaging with it. So there are a couple of things that the tech industry does really, really well. So we've already talked about the things that they're not doing well, but these are some of the things that they do well. They recruit smart people to solve some of the world's largest problems, and they give them awesome perks. I partook in these as an employee of Google for a year, and getting a free ride to work and 3 meals a day was pretty awesome. So why aren't there more people of color clamoring to get into this industry? There are lots of reasons. I'm going to tell you a few today. Part of it is this idea that tech is a meritocracy. I have to say that this word is kind of starting to hurt when I hear it from people defending the fact that there aren't people of color and there aren't women in their companies. So this cartoon explains meritocracy in the way I see it in the US today, and specifically when it applies to technology. So it says, for a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. That sounds fair. Please climb that tree. So as you can tell, all the people standing in front of him who want to take that exam or want to enter the tech industry don't have the same skills or access to opportunity that everyone else in that line does. So that's what I hear when I hear meritocracy, that it's a great idea, but when it's put into practice, you're not taking into account the discrepancy and in the skills and resources that people have access to. So let's talk about the education pipeline, because if you don't have the basics of math and science, you're going to have a really hard time entering into computer science. So let's look at 4th grade. 25% of Black and Latino students cannot do science at the 4th grade level, who are Black and Latino, versus 92% of their Asian and white peers. And if you look at math, only 41% of Black and Latino students are doing 4th grade math. So if their educational pipeline starts off with a deficit where education isn't the same for Black and Latino students as it is for whites and Asians, how do we expect them to get into the industry? Even if they make it and are very interested and make it to the level where they can take an AP exam, the advanced placement exam, which is the highest, or one of the highest ways to prove your experience in math, science, computer science, and other subject areas. Whites and Asians are 4 times as likely to take a math or science AP exam than Blacks and Latinos, and 6 times as likely to take the computer science exam. Even if they make it past high school and into college, only 18% of college CS grads are Black or Latino. And even if they have that diploma with CS on it, only 9% of students are entering into the tech workforce who are Black or Latino. So you see a precipitous drop along the pipeline through college and into industry. Now, if I'm a 4th grader and I am starting in tech and I think, I'll start to build a website, or I really love gaming, so let me try that. And then I find it difficult. And then I go and try and find some mentors or people to look up to. There's not a lot of people out there who look like me if I'm Black or Latino. So of VC-backed companies, only 1% are Black. And 83% of VC-backed company founders have all white teams. And Latino numbers aren't up there, but they're very similar to the African-American community. A lot of this, when we think about how people are hiring and why there is a lack of people of color and women in the workforce, comes from unconscious bias. Over the past month, there have been a couple of articles in the news, one in the Huffington Post about Jose Zamora, who took out the S in his first name after having a lot of trouble getting people to call him back from resumes, from sending his resume in. And once he took out that S, he started to get more and more responses. So it's not necessarily that people look at it and say, oh, Jose's, I would never hire a Jose, I would never hire a Latin American. It's an unconscious thing that people do because of their unconscious bias. And even Google is starting to recognize their hidden bias and doing trainings with their staff to try and mitigate that and help people recognize when they make comments or judgments that it's coming from a place where they're going to start to screen out viable candidates. So that's what it looks like on the larger scale. And I want to tell you a little bit about the lived experience when it comes to race in America. There are a couple different experiences you can have with race in America. One, like this, is kind of raising everyone up and celebrating all cultures and valuing everyone. Another one looks like this, in Ferguson, Missouri, where people are experiencing overt racism on a daily basis. Now, both of these experiences are valid and should be talked about, but often the second is never mentioned until we have people using technology to expose them for what they really are. So for me, this is my headshot. This is what I look like. I can't change this unless I go under surgery, but this is what I was given because of where I come from. Now, when I meet someone, this is what they see, and usually people greet each other and they ask each other, "What's your name?" So my name's Iris, nice to meet you all. They also tend to ask you where you're from. I am originally from Denver, Colorado, so that's usually what I say because I really love it, even though I live in San Francisco and love it as well. And then it may not be the third question, but somewhere in the first 10, people ask me, "What are you?" And if I'm feeling in the mood, I'll answer them honestly, knowing what they're actually asking me. Sometimes I just say, "I'm human, what are you?" Because they're really asking me about a question to try and fit me in a box that they understand, right? Let me tell you a little bit about where I come from so you can understand what it's like to look like what I do, aside from getting this question on a very consistent basis. This is my mom. She's my hero, or my heroine, and she taught my brother and I, along with my dad, to be great humans, to recognize where we come from and use that in a positive way to change the world. She bought me this book when I was very young. It's called Black, White, Just Right, because my dad is black and my mom is white. I'm also Native American. But they bought me this book to give me the power to, one, understand where I come from and who I am, but also give me the power to say, it's just right. Who I am is defined by the people behind me, but it's also defined by who I choose to be and the way I choose to present myself to the world. So when someone asks me, "What are you?" I really want to just tell them, I'm just right. I am who I am, and I'm going to change the world in a positive way. So another thing that often happens to my mom, I'll tell you a story, is confusion about my brother and I. So this is a picture of my brother and I, and we call it the gap picture in our family. And you can kind of tell why. This is Christmas morning when I was 13 or something. And people are very confused when they see us and then they see my mom. She's in HR, and she interviews people every day, and this sits on her desk. And she had one interviewee who looked at it and said, "Oh, are you going to put a picture of your family in that frame?" And my mom said, "Those are my kids." And she's like, "Oh, so you adopted?" And my mom said, "No, those are my kids." And then she quickly tries to move the conversation along to the interview. At the end of the interview, the interviewee is still perplexed about how this white woman can have children that look like my brother and I. And so she says again, "So those are really your kids?" And my mom is a really funny woman, and she goes, "Yes, I gave birth to them." And she makes the motion of giving birth to give her that visual of us coming from my mother. So I get it, right? I had confusion as a kid of where we came from and why we looked different than our parents, why our parents looked different than us. Because we want to put people in a box. We want to make sense of the world. So I don't necessarily take offense to when people ask me, "What are you?" But I just want to let them know that there are other ways that you can ask that question to get at the answer that you really want. And there are other things about me that are just as important as where I came from. So one is that I worked at Google, which you already know. Another is that I went to Pomona College, which I'm really proud of. I loved my experience there. I'm also from Denver. I have a great mom who's my hero. And I work at Code 2040, where we work to close the divide for Blacks and Latinos in tech. So if someone had asked me a different set of questions, they would have gotten at these other things about me and maybe learned a lot more about who I am and why I believe the things I do and why I do the work that I do. So at Code 2040, we are leveraging the power of technology. Much like those in the Arab Spring, we are harnessing the power of technology to change the world. Technology has become something where we can change our revolutionary tools from AK-47s and machetes to Twitter and Facebook, and change our cities, our countries, and the world at the swipe of a key. That's a lot of power to place in technology, and it's a little scary, while also very fulfilling, and makes me excited to see our students that we work with every summer in our fellows program to see how they can change the world. So you'll see 3 photos here. One is our pilot class of 5 students from 2012. The next is our next class of 2013, which had 18 students, and our class this year had 25. So when people tell me they can't find talented Black and Latino students, I say, well, you should partner with Code 2040 because we have a lot of them. They came from a pool of over 600 applications, and we had 48 students. So we had about an 8% admissions rate across the 3 years. And we're placing them at really awesome, interesting companies where they're really impressing their managers and their companies as a whole. About 90% of our students get return offers at the end of their summers. Most of the time, they're learning new languages and new platforms and pushing code within the first days and weeks of their internships. These are the companies from our last summer who partnered with us. So there's some companies on there that you probably recognize, like LinkedIn and Jawbone and Facebook. But there are also some that are up-and-coming startups that are starting revolutions of their own, like Code for America and Schoolzilla, which is an ed tech company, and Findery, which is a social discovery platform. So when someone tells me that they don't know where to start, I say, well, look at all these companies. They started with us. So if we look across the summer and what we're actually providing our students and how we're changing coding culture, we're giving them not only that internship at a top tech company, but we're giving them people to look up to. So we give each student 2 mentors for the summer that they meet with at least 3 times, and 3 times over the summer, and then we also have them meet with them throughout the school year. So they're building a long lifetime relationship with someone who has made it, who has been where they have been, who has had the struggles that they have had, and can show them the way to success. We also give them a speaker series where they're meeting with venture capitalists, founders, CTOs across Silicon Valley to get exposure to the different types of jobs they can have. They also do interactive workshops. So this is a picture of Terry Winograd, who was the advisor to the Google founders and started the Stanford Design School. So having access to people like Terry and many others has allowed our students to not only have access to people, but resources to start their own businesses and change that 1% to 42%. They also go to company visits. So what's interesting and amazing about our program is that you're not just experiencing what most students experience when they're a person of color at a company, meaning they experience isolation and feelings of imposter syndrome, but they get to be in a room with 18 to 25 other students who are experiencing maybe similar things, but they get to come together and talk about their experiences being on a 3-person team or on a 15-person team at a 10,000-person company. And that's a really awesome experience for our students so that they can get a wide picture of what it's like to work in tech at all levels. Something else we do is provide a hackathon. This summer we sponsored our 2nd hackathon called Hack for Diversity, Closing the Gap. So when we look at our students' backgrounds, we look for leadership and the desire to change their communities. So we built this hackathon to give them a space to build products to do just that and close the gap for themselves and everyone else around them. The winner of this year's hackathon was Christian and Mohammed, and they built TransDocs. So if you're familiar with the tech industry, you know that technical documentation is really important to digging deep into understanding tech. Now, most technical documentation is written in English. So if you're speaking Spanish or any other language at home, our students spoke Spanish at home, It's really hard if you're interested in tech to really dig deeper and understand the technology on a different level if you're not speaking English as a first language, because technical documentation is generally in English. So they created transdocs to translate technical documents into 17 other languages so that globally people can have better access to technology. That's just one example of technology built by a community for their community. There are a couple of solutions that I want to talk about aside from Code 2040. We're an obvious solution, but we right now are only in the Bay Area, and we'll be expanding next week to another city, so look out for that press release. So there are some solutions that you can do on your own. One is to think about diversity now, so that when you have that image of a startup, of dudes in a dorm room, and then you end up, with numbers that you're ashamed of when you're 30, 40,000 people, you can avoid that if you start that thinking about diversity now. So again, when I think about our companies, our average company is about 100 people. So they're really engaging and intentionally thinking about diversity before they become 1,000, 30,000 people. And then to change what you're looking for. It doesn't mean you lower the bar, it means your set of criteria adjusts so that you're not leaving talent on the table. So one of our investors and board members, Ben Horowitz, tells a story about looking at his leadership teams, and one of his leaders is a woman, and her team has a lot of women on it. And then he looked at his male colleagues and said, "What's going on? You guys don't have as many women as she does. Like, is she biased? What's she looking at?" So he asked her, "What's your number one criteria for your team?" And she said, "Helpfulness." So something that's pretty attached to our constructs of gender allowed her to tap into a different pool that is just as talented and creates just as great work as having the criteria of the other people on his team. So now helpfulness is also on their lists. So again, it's not about lowering the bar, which I get asked about all the time. It's about adding a different set of criteria that get you the same result when it comes to work. So helpfulness is just as important as the other criteria. And then, where are you looking for talent? When we go out to colleges and universities to recruit students, we not only look at the top 10 CS schools, we also look at the schools who actually have Black and Latino students enrolled in their CS departments. So we have students from the typical top 10, CMU, Stanford, Berkeley, and they're phenomenal coders. We also have phenomenal coders from Tennessee State University, the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras, which is where Christian, the hackathon winner, is from. And I think what is interesting is that people don't go to these colleges because they think there aren't enough top coders there, but they're also going to colleges where there aren't enough Black and Latino and women who fit their criteria. So everyone's clamoring for those 30 students at CMU who fit into the diversity box, but they could be going to the University of Texas Pan American where there are 500 Latino students studying computer science. So it's not necessarily that we are not looking in the same places, but we're not looking in the same places expecting a different result, which is what a lot of companies are doing. We're changing the way we look at colleges and where we recruit. If we go to take the University of Pan America, Texas Pan America, for example, a lot of their students have family obligations that they want to commit to through college, so they stay nearby. Doesn't mean that they couldn't have gotten into the CMUs and Stanfords of the world. It means that maybe they applied and then they made the decision to put family first and go to a college nearby their family. So they're just as talented and they're just as smart. They just may be located in a different area. These are our 3 areas that we look at when we look for talent. Coding ability, a passion for tech and innovation, and then leadership and initiative. So our coding bar is very, very high. Students take an API challenge, which has 6 levels, and the API challenge is unbiased, meaning it's language agnostic, and it allows us to analyze how far someone can go in across different skills. So we test like algorithms, reversing a string, etc. And that process allows us to not put up too many walls for students, because coding is all about the ability to push yourself to learn something new and different. So if you talk to hiring managers, they don't just want someone who's memorized a book and memorized answers. They want someone who can talk you through their thought process and logic out how they got to an answer, as opposed to just getting the answer itself. So the way we analyze someone's technical ability is based on just that. So at each level, we'll be able to give students resources to look at to push through each level, as opposed to just saying, good luck, here's the API challenge. So if we see someone stuck on level 3, for instance, we'll shoot them an email and say, hey, have you looked at these 3 articles? I think this will help you get past this level. So again, going back to the way people actually learn in tech, we give students the ability to practice that through our challenges. So at the end of the day, we want to change this number to 42 instead of 1, so that the people who are using the products are actually building them as well. So I'm really excited to have students like Christian and Mohammed to be those examples for every 4th and 8th grader out there who isn't meeting the math and science and CS levels of those things. Cool. That's it. We'll take questions now. And there's a mic over there.
Hi, James Ward. Haven't worked for Google, but I also write for an education blog and have done a whole series of women in science, technology, engineering, math. Interviewed a whole bunch of people, head of Black Girls Code, NASA scientists, Disney Imagineers, a whole series of women. And my theory is that if you don't fix the problem starting in middle school, it's almost impossible to fix in high school and college. I want to get your thoughts about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for us, we work with pipeline orgs like Girls Who Code and Black Girls Code, who are working with K through 12 to build the pipeline earlier on. So we found that having companies and organizations who are really good at each thing working well together helps to close that gap. So as soon as those students are freshmen in college, they can come to us, and we work really closely with them, in addition to SMASH, which is run by the Level Playing Field Institute. So I agree with you, and that's why we work really closely with those other orgs.
I guess if no one has questions, please feel free to contact us if you need through Twitter or email.
Yeah.
And we are so happy to have had this session together, because we're going to try to combine what Code 24 does into Chicas Poderosas, because we need to learn from you guys to help improve. Thank you for being here. It was very kind of you.
Thank you.